Hello and welcome back to Liberal Breakdown. Let's talk about the recent man who got falsely deported in the El Salvador prison. So here's what happened. The Trump administration wrongfully deported a Salvadoran asylum seeker, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, despite the fact that a judge literally ruled that he was protected from deportation. They just sent him to El Salvador's most notorious prison, and now the US is like, yeah, we can't get him back. How does this even happen? And more importantly, why does this keep happening?
Meanwhile, the Trump administration acknowledged in a court filing yesterday it inadvertently deported a Maryland man to El Salvador because of an administrative error, but that U.S. courts are powerless to order his return. Kilmar Abrego Garcia is a Salvadorian national who came to the U.S. at the age of 16 in 2011 after fleeing gang threats in his native land. According to Politico, he was deemed by an immigration judge in 2019 to be a likely member of the MS-13 gang, a decision he sharply contested and that the government credited to information gleaned from a confidential informant. But the court also agreed at the time that he should not be deported to El Salvador, finding that his fear of being persecuted or tortured was credible. On Monday, attorneys for the government admitted that Abrego Garcia was deported accidentally.
Let's break it down. All right, so here's the official excuse. ICE made an administrative error, which is government speak for we screwed up, but don't expect us to actually fix it. They deported 260 people to El Salvador, claiming they were gang members. But oops, turns out some of them, like Abrego Garcia, weren't actually criminals. In fact, he was fleeing from gangs. And here's the kicker. He was legally protected from deportation by a judge. He was married to a U.S. citizen. He has a disabled U.S. citizen child. And yet, the Trump administration just threw him into El Salvador's terrorism confinement center, which, let's be real, is just a fancy name for a human rights nightmare. Now, his wife literally saw him in a video from inside the prison and was like, wait, that's my husband, which is how this whole mess even came to light. Now, when caught, did the US government say, oh no, we made a huge mistake. Let's get him back? Nope. Instead, they basically said, yeah, we messed up, but we can't really do anything about it. Good luck. The Department of Justice is literally admitting in court that the US doesn't have the power to bring him back. Because I guess when the US wants to throw its weight around in foreign countries, we're all about intervention. But when it comes to fixing our own mistakes, suddenly we're powerless? What's worse? They knew this could happen. The Trump administration started these mass deportations without hearings, basically just pointing fingers and saying, yeah, that guy looks like a gang member. Send him away. And now, Abrego Garcia is stuck in a Salvadoran prison, possibly being tortured for something he didn't do. This isn't just about one person. This is about a pattern. The Trump administration gutted the asylum system, ignored due process, and basically treated immigrants like disposable trash. This is just the latest example of how that reckless approach destroys lives. And let's not pretend this is just some bureaucratic accident. This was deliberate policy. The goal was to deport as many people as possible, no matter the cost. And now, a U.S. citizen's husband, a disabled child's father, is sitting in a foreign prison, and the government is acting like this is just an unfortunate mistake. Imagine if this were your family. Imagine if this were you. This is what happens when we let xenophobia drive policy instead of actual law and human decency. And here's the scary part. If Trump gets back in office, this is exactly the kind of thing that's going to happen again, but worse. So what do you think? Should the U.S. take responsibility and get Abrego Garcia back? Or are we just going to pretend that, oops, my bad, is an acceptable excuse for ruining lives? Let's talk about another geopolitical crisis that's heating up while most of the world is just trying to figure out what's for dinner. China is flexing its military muscles again near Taiwan. The U.S. is sending more weapons. And of course, conservative hawks in Washington are acting like they want World War III.
China has launched large-scale war exercises around the self-ruled island of Taiwan. The Chinese Army, Navy and Air Force sent planes and 19 warships to surround Taiwan in a drill aimed at practicing a total air and sea blockade of the territory. Beijing said the exercises are meant to send a stern warning to Taiwan, which it considers part of China. Taiwan is accusing China of being the world's biggest troublemaker.
Navy and Air Force that it is using its newest aircraft carrier, the Shandong, and it is basically gathering around the island of Taiwan. And the goal here, it's made very clear, is to practice and prepare for a potential invasion of the island. territory that Beijing considers its own. It says that its goals are to practice seizing territory, striking air and land targets, and taking comprehensive control and forming a blockade against the island.
So let's break this down and, more importantly, react to this absurdity. So here's what's happening. China just launched massive military exercises around Taiwan. We're talking fighter jets, warships, and probably a few TikTok spies taking notes. Totally normal neighbor behavior, right? The message from Beijing, hey, Taiwan, don't even think about independence, or else. Because apparently threatening an island of 23 million people with war is just part of China's weekend plans now. And honestly, this isn't new. China's been doing this for years. But what's wild is that every time tensions flare up, conservatives in the US go into full-on war mode. Like, bro, do you really want another endless war? Now, let's talk about what the US is doing in response. Because, of course, we have to get involved. First off, Taiwan's military is beefing up. A top Taiwanese defense official is literally flying to the US as we speak to pick up a brand new F-16V fighter jet. Because if there's one thing we love doing, it's selling weapons. And you already know the defense contractors are sitting there like, oh no, a possible war? That's terrible. Anyway, here's our price list. It's always the same cycle. China postures, Taiwan panics, and the US rushes in with a multi-billion-dollar weapons deal. Meanwhile, Americans back home can't even get affordable healthcare or decent public transportation, but yeah, let's send more missiles overseas. Now let's talk about the conservative politicians foaming at the mouth over this situation. You've got people like Senator Bomb Everything Cotton out here saying Biden needs to be tougher on China. Meanwhile, these same guys scream America first every 5 seconds until it's time to fund another international conflict. And the MAGA crowd, half of them are like, we should just let China take Taiwan, who cares? And the other half is like, we need to start a war right now. Make it make sense. Here's the thing. I get that Taiwan wants to defend itself. I support Taiwan. But how about we not make this another forever war situation? Let's use diplomacy, economic pressure, literally anything other than immediately jumping to military action. Oh, and by the way, US intelligence is warning that China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea are basically forming a supervillain squad against the West. So while Republicans are here arguing over trans rights and banning books, these countries are out here like, let's completely destabilize the US global influence while they fight over whether Barbie was too feminist. Seriously, we need smarter leadership. Stop underestimating China's long-term strategy and stop pretending we can just out-military our way out of everything. So yeah, China's flexing, Taiwan is in a tough spot, and the US government is once again treating war like a business deal.
Let me be clear. Europe did not start this confrontation. We think it is wrong. But my message to you today is that we have everything we need to protect our people and our prosperity. We have the largest single market in the world. We have the strength to negotiate. We have the power to push back. And the people of Europe should know that together we will always promote and defend our interests and our values, and together we will always stand up for our Europe. So far, the US administration has announced a 25% increase of tariffs on imports of steel and aluminium, cars and car parts. The next sectors facing tariffs will be semiconductors, pharmaceuticals and timber. And tomorrow we expect another announcement with so-called reciprocal tariffs that will immediately apply to almost all goods and many countries in the world.
So here's what's happening. The EU is preparing to hit back against new US tariffs. Trump is pushing for 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum, with potential new ones on cars. And now the European Union is like, oh, so you want to play that game? Bet. They've got a $28 billion counter-tariff package ready to go, targeting everything from American steel to agricultural products. Basically, we're about to have another round of who can make trade more expensive, a game where everyone loses. So why is the US pulling this move again? Well, the official excuse is protecting American jobs. But in reality, tariffs usually do the opposite. Yeah, steel and aluminum producers might benefit, but guess what? American manufacturers, the ones who actually buy steel, now have to pay way more for their materials. That means higher prices, layoffs, and businesses shutting down. It's like setting your house on fire and calling it a renovation. And let's be honest, Trump loves playing tough on trade because it sounds good at rallies. We're bringing jobs back. Meanwhile, those jobs are getting priced out of existence because of these very policies. Now, the EU isn't just standing there taking this. Nope. They've been waiting for this moment. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen just straight up said, "We have a strong plan to counter this nonsense." They're going after American exports hard. Think U.S. steel, aluminum, home appliances, textiles, and agriculture. So yeah, those tariffs, they're boomeranging right back to American farmers and industries. And let's not forget, last time the U.S. tried this under Trump, the same thing happened. The EU retaliated, and guess who got hurt the most? American workers. It's almost like learning from history is an option. But, some politicians prefer to just repeat the same mistakes louder. All right, so who actually benefits from this trade war? Not consumers, that's for sure. Prices are going up. Not small businesses, they rely on imports and exports to survive. Not manufacturers, they're stuck paying more for raw materials. Oh, but you know who is making bank? The military-industrial complex, as always, and giant corporations who just pass the cost on to you. And of course, politicians who get to pretend they're protecting American jobs while they actually tank industries. Also, China is probably just sitting back, eating popcorn, and enjoying this whole mess. Because when the US and Europe are busy fighting each other, it just makes China's economy look like the stable option for global trade. Look, here's the real issue. This whole situation proves that trade wars don't solve anything. They just lead to more economic instability, job losses, and diplomatic tensions. If the US really wanted to win against China's economic influence, maybe, just maybe, we should be strengthening our alliances instead of picking fights with Europe. Like, I don't know, working with the EU on trade policies instead of against them? But no, instead of actual strategy, we get another round of tariff chicken, where no one wins. So what do you think about this mess that's happening? Falsely deporting people and playing with the world by imposing tariffs? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button if you think this is completely messed up. Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.